Hello everyone and welcome back to JB Soul Gaming, and well, the new mod for the Harpak that you can get from Nightwave is currently available if you've been getting all the points for Nightwave so far. So, the Exposing Harpoon here, this will give you 300% critical chance when harpooning an enemy for 10 seconds. Now, if you're not familiar with the Harpak, it is a weapon that has a 3-burst regular fire. I did try this with heavy caliber. I overall don't think, especially if you have multi-shot on a weapon, that heavy caliber is worth using. It makes it too inaccurate at any sort of real distances. And then it has a secondary fire of a harpoon that it shoots out. And the harpoon does have a good amount of drop-off, actually, that will pull enemies towards you. So it's a decent form of crowd control. It actually has pretty decent damage. And as you can see, it can pull enemies pretty far, like in that situation. And you can see the timer up there in the upper right that's just about to go off now, where we'll get that 300% critical chance, which is pretty neat. So will this make this weapon awesome? Well, this was already a pretty decent weapon as it was. So here we're going to start off, we're going to show it off against level 100 corrupted heavy gunners. That's usually what I use up to that 43, the very tanky, armor heavy enemies. And you can see here we have kind of what you would expect of a corrosive build against them. So we have the 6060 mods, acceleration for damage, split chamber for multi-shot, and the 6060 mods here. Point strike and vital sense for crit chance, crit damage. Exposing harpoon, which is the mod we want to show off, and then a 90 mod for just more corrosive damage, making corrosive more likely to proc when we get a status chance and things like that. So this is kind of a base build for the weapon here, nothing real crazy. So let's go ahead and harpoon another enemy, and then we'll get some headshots on here, and we'll see what this weapon can do. Now you can see those orange crits that we're getting. So this weapon against level 100 corrupted heavy gunner. So these are fairly tanky enemies, not incredibly high end game. We're not going into like 2-hour long survivals or anything. We're definitely gonna get higher level than that. But these are very tanky enemies at level 100 is pretty high, and you can see the weapon is doing work. It was a pretty decent weapon already, and this is a mod that definitely helps it out with just a regular corrosive build, so that we're getting more and more of those orange crits will help us finish off the enemies even faster. However, that's definitely not the only build we're going to show off. I do think that on a regular corrosive build like that, this mod definitely does some work. However, there are definitely other ways you can do that. So let's go ahead and kill the enemies and bring them back in and show off another potential build. So one thing you could do, instead of putting a this mod on here, this is a slot where you could put in all kinds of things. You could put on shred if you wanted to. You could put on hunter munitions, and you might say, hey, it's a great weapon, let's try out hunter munitions. Well, if I did try that with hunter munitions on here, and honestly it performs quite well, obviously against high level enemies, getting a bleed on there. But there's another build I wanted to show off with hunter munitions, but instead we're going to go ahead and jump to using argon scope and bladed rounds. So these are weapons that on a kill will give us more critical chance, on a kill will give us more critical damage, and on a headshot will give us more critical chance, each for 9 seconds. Now these are a lot of things to have up, but having all three of these up, if we do that, is going to make this weapon pretty effective as well. And then we have, critical chance, crit damage, multi-shot damage, and of course the exposing harpoon. So again, you can just throw bladed rounds onto the last build. It performs well, probably a little bit better than just the pure corrosive build, especially against highly armored enemies like this. We're getting our headshots. We're going to get our first kill. So to really see this weapon have its effect, we're going to harpoon and kill an enemy. There we go. So now we have all three of those things up, and you can see we'll hit the enemy a few times, and then we'll get those bleed procs. You can see we're getting about 1,400 and some on the bleed procs, which is pretty effective. So let's go ahead and harpoon another enemy. Why not? And then try to get all three of those up again. And you can see we're able to bring the enemy down to a decent amount, and then the enemy will die. And then with all three of those procs on, so let's get our harpoon again. And this is where this build gets a little bit tricky, having all three of those procs at the same time. But when you do, you see that the enemy can definitely bleed out, and this can be a very effective build again, but with the caveat of having to remember to get headshot. Well, you don't have to really remember to get kills, but having all three of those things active makes this, a pretty impressive build, and we can get some pretty impressive bleeds with those hunter munition shots. And while this build can be very effective, particularly effective against higher leveled enemies with lots of armor, it's a lot of things to keep up. So it's really kind of up to you. I think, where you want to build this, but I definitely think this is a mod that is going to make this weapon, see a lot more play. It was already a pretty decent weapon. And like I said, why don't we go ahead and show it off and just throw Hunter munitions on here real quick. So again, this is a mod that on a critical hit, which we're going to be getting all the time with this weapon, especially with the Exposing Harpoon here. So right now we're only at 50%, but with this, obviously, we're going to get a whole bunch of critical hits. So let's go ahead and bring those enemies back in just so you can kind of see this. And for me personally, maybe I would prefer this as opposed to what we had before. So you can see, let's go ahead and harpoon somebody. That's all right, we don't need to worry about kills on this build. And we're not only doing decent damage, we're going to get some orange crits, and we're getting smaller bleeds. That's the thing. Having that full build where we're not worried about the elemental damage, we're going to get larger bleeds. We're just worried about doing damage overall with that build. But a mix of kind of a corrosive and then a hunting munitions build will also work quite effectively as well. We don't necessarily need to worry about aiming or anything like that with this build. So if you're somebody that doesn't like to aim down sights, went into the wrong thing there, and I don't know why that build. Oh, I was just playing around. I actually usually use Wukong, not Wukong Prime. I've invested a lot in that one. So with this build here, this is kind of what I would go with if you are interested in, changing your 60-60 mods depending on who you are fighting. Going with a gas build, say, if you're going up against the Corpus instead of the Grenadier. But this build, I really like. It's nice if you're not having to worry about that. This build, obviously, if you really want to go super high-level enemies and you aim down sights anyways, this is something I would suggest. Again, play around with the build if you want, but as you can see, the Exposing Harpoon mod, is going to get us a lot of critical hits, and not only make the weapon better in and of itself, but if you have hunter munitions and don't mind using it, well, it's going to make it more effective as well. Now, I do have a Riven for this weapon, as you can see. Damage, critical chance, and punch through. So this is a pretty good Riven. And what I decided to go with on this build is, while I certainly do like having the combination of bladed rounds along with, where to go here, with Argon Scope, I having all of that up at the same time can be a little bit tricky. So this is kind of what I'm going with right now. So I'm letting this take this spot, because when I have this going, I really do have a good critical chance between this and this. We're doing pretty well. So I'm not as worried about Argon Scope. So I let that replace it with this Riven here. So this is kind of setup I have with my Riven. So let's go ahead and show this off real quick. But overall, and again, we will want to kill to proc on this one. So let's go ahead and bring this enemy down. Then we'll harpoon him. And there, now he's dead. And this one's almost dead. So now we can see with this Riven, obviously, it's a 5 out of 5 disposition on the Riven. So as you can see, yeah, we can do a lot of work with a Riven on this. And I like having hunter munitions on, and, I don't necessarily mind aiming down sights. But I'll admit, I'm not the best player. I don't always want to worry about headshots, and I definitely, between this mod and the Riven, I definitely have enough critical chance that I'm not as worried about missing out on the critical chance on the headshots there. So overall, the Harpak was a pretty decent weapon before, but I definitely think this is a mod that, first of all, will make the secondary fire that really wasn't used all that much, except for maybe some crowd control, something that you're going to be wanting to use more often, and make this weapon that was pretty decent into a weapon that I think a lot more people are going to be using. It already was. If you had a full build on it, it could definitely be endgame viable, but I think this is a mod that will definitely help it out, and just make the weapon more fun for people to use, and more powerful, because those two do often go hand in hand. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe. It really helps. We'd like to grow the channel, maybe try to become a Warframe partner at one point, and doing all that stuff really helps out. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon.